Okay, so we will reconvene, and Trustee Nzewi has been able to join us, and Trustee Barrios, of course. So we'll begin with our land acknowledgement. We recognize that the Mount Diablo Unified School District sits on the territory of the Confederated Villages of the Lishan, the ancestral and unceded land of the Bay Miwok in northern Yokut, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Contra Costa County. As members of the MDUSD community, it is vitally important that we not only recognize the history of the land on which we learn, but also we recognize that the land we inhabit and learn on is the ancestral land of these people who are alive and flourishing members of the MDUSD and broader Bay Area communities today. You may stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So that brings us to 6.3, review and potential approval of minutes for regular board meeting held May 8th and special board meeting held May 15th, 2024.
Madam President, I move the board approve the meeting minutes for May 8th, 2024 and for May 15th, 2024.
Second.
Okay.
Second that.
Motion from Trustee Mayo and a second from Trustee Nzewi. And how do you vote, Trustee Barrios?
Yes.
Okay. That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. Okay. So we move to 6.4, review and potential approval of the agenda for this evening. Dr. Clark?
Good evening, Madam President. I would like to pull item 10.1.
Okay. And no other changes?
That's it.
Okay, great.
Madam President, I move to approve the agenda, except for item 10.1. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. That's a motion from Trustee Cowan and a second from Trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote? That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. Okay, so we move to the report out of action taken in closed session. For 7.1 negotiations, the board may discuss negotiations or provide direction to its representatives regarding represented employees. Government Code Section 54957.6. The board received information. For 7.2, discipline, dismissal, release, or reassignment of public employee, Government Code Section 54957B1. There were a few items on this. So in a closed session by a vote of 5-0, the board took action to approve the retirement of one employee per the separation agreement. In closed session by a vote of 4-0 with one abstention, which was Trustee Mason, the board took action to approve the resignation of one employee per the separation agreement. And then in closed session by a vote of 5-0, the board took action to approve the separation agreement of one employee. For 7.3, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. The board met in closed session with legal counsel to discuss the matters of anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B, and by a vote of 5-0 in the matters of student XV versus MDUSD, and also student NV versus MDUSD, and also student MM versus MDUSD. The board approved settlements up to the stipulated amounts. For 7.4, readmission of student 07-23 to regular schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. The board approved the readmission of student 07-23 to regular schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. Student 07-23 met the following conditions: completed 20 hours of counseling that addressed anger management, social emotional learning, and trauma, and also showed evidence of a successful school experience with no suspendable infractions, maintained a 2.56 GPA, earned 52.5 credits, and had a 97% attendance rate. And then for 7.5, readmission of student 11-23 to regular schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. The board approved the readmission of student 11-23 to regular schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. Student 11-23 met the following conditions: completed 20 hours of counseling that addressed anger management and decision-making, showed evidence of a successful school experience with no suspendable infractions, maintained a 2.8 GPA, earned 30 credits, and had a 94.8% attendance rate. And then for 7.6, public employee performance evaluation superintendent, the board discussed the superintendent's performance. 7.7, conference with counsel existing litigation. The board met in closed session with legal counsel to discuss a matter of existing litigation pursuant to Government Code section 54956.9, and by a vote of 5-0, in the matter of student XC versus MDUSD, OAH case numbers 202-312-0044 and 202-402-0942. The board approved a settlement up to the stipulated amount. And those were all of our closed session items. So we move to public comment. No, and we move past public comment. Okay. 9.0 communications. Do we have a speaker for? No. Okay. All right. So we move to recognitions and resolutions. Dr. Clark.
Thank you so much, Madam President. On the next resolutions, I'm not going to do my normal reading of the resolutions because these are just technical resolutions that we have to pass. And so I'm just going to read the title and whatnot. And if there's any questions of the board, I'd be happy to answer those questions. So we have resolution before you tonight, 23/24-68 in matter of ordering regular governing board member elections, specifications of the election order. There's no questions. I'll leave this in the hands of the board.
Madam President, I move to approve Resolution 2324, number 68, Order of Consolidation of Governing Board Elections.
Second.
It's a motion from Trustee Count and a second from Trustee Mayo. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member.
Great. So item 10.3, I will actually say something about this. Resolution 23/24-69, revision to regular board meetings for the 2024 calendar year. And just in case anyone in the audience or any of the public want to know, it has been determined that the December organizational meeting date does not align with California Education Code 35143. So we have to now change our date. The date of December, in December 24, the board meeting is changed from December 18th to December 11th. So I'm asking for the board to take action on that.
Madam Chair, I move to approve Resolution 23/24, number 69, revision to regular board meetings for the 2024 calendar year.
Second.
A motion from Trustee Mason and a second from Trustee Mayo. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member.
Great. And the next item is just some cleanup language that we have to do. So resolution 23/24-71, board compensation for missed meetings for the 23-24 school year. And those are listed. And both met the acceptable absences per policy. So we're asking that the board accept this resolution.
We had a little error message there. Okay. Well, I make the motion to approve resolution 23/24, number 71, board compensation for missed meetings for the 2023-24 school year.
Second,
A motion from trustee Mason and a second from trustee Mayo. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
The, the people at issue might want to consider recusing themselves.
I would like to recuse myself from this item.
I'll recuse myself as well. Yeah, thank you for that advice.
We have a gremlin in our system.
Voice vote? We're gonna do a voice vote.
Take a voice vote and we're gonna have to walk out. I think Mason made the motion and you made the second. It's
Okay.
on there.
oh, there it is. All right. I'm supposed to call for the vote. So we have Deborah Mason made the motion to approve resolution 23/24, number 71, board compensation for missed meetings for the 23-24 school year. And Linda Mayo made the second. Student member Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Members, please cast your ballots.
Nice.
All right.
So the motion is adopted. 3 members voted yes. No members voted no. 2 abstained because the motion was concerning their compensation. And no one was absent, and we have a concurrence from the student board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is Resolution 23/24-76, Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators. This is a resolution that generates from our Human Resources Department, and the declaration will declare the need of teachers that need to be hired on emergency permits. So we're asking for approval of this resolution.
I move to approve Resolution 24-25, number 76, Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators.
Second,
Okay, that's a motion from trustee Nzewi and a second from trustee Mayo. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member.
Great. Well, President McFerrin, we are so excited for these next seven items. We are adding to the Mount Diablo team, and with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Rubio to come and present our first candidate.
Good evening, Dr. Clark. Good evening, board members. It's my pleasure to bring before you item 11.1, review and potential approval of certificated personnel appointment for Assistant Director, Multilingual Education. Our candidate who was selected and being recommended is Chitra Bardwaj. She's been serving as the Director of Multilingual Education for the last 5 years in Washington, leading the district there and in state initiatives for multilingualism. She has expanded Arabic, Hindi, and Korean language offerings for her school district, and also leading the language and literacy adoption and instructional framework for her large district. She has a bachelor's degree in English literature, economics, and political science, a master's degree in education and English literature, and currently working on her doctorate. After 25 years of living in Oregon and Washington State, her and her family are moving to California and very excited. She's passionate about multilingualism, and she values this opportunity and commits to serve our students, families, and community. With that, I leave this appointment in your hands. And she could not be here this evening. She's still moving.
Madam President, I move to appoint Chitra Bardwaj as Assistant Director, Multilingual Education.
I'll second that.
It's a motion from trustee Count and a second from trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and that motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Item 11.2, review and potential approval of certificated personnel appointment, Chief of Educational Services. We're very happy and pleased to bring before you recommendation for Samantha Allen to be our new Chief of Educational Services. Samantha, there you are. Great, great. Began her journey in education as a substitute teacher at Wren Elementary in 1999. She later was at Crossroads High School, where she worked as an English teacher, social science teacher, and cooking teacher. She later was a vice principal of alternative high schools, eventually returning to Crossroads as a principal. 7 years ago, Samantha transitioned to the district office, assuming the role of Director of Secondary Support. She has a bachelor's degree in liberal studies. And outside of work, her greatest joy comes from her family. In her free time, Samantha enjoys traveling to see her daughters, and I'm pretty sure at least one is here tonight, and her son and husband. One of her daughters who is still in college at CSU Long Beach, and the other who recently graduated from University of Nevada, Reno. Samantha also enjoys attending her son's high school baseball games. And if there's any time left, Samantha and her family love to travel. With that, I leave this appointment in your hands.
Madam President, I move the board approve the appointment of Samantha Allen as Chief of Educational Services.
Second.
Motion from trustee Mayo and a second by trustee Nzewi. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Definitely.
All right. Yeah.
Good evening, Dr. Clark, board, student board member Susanna. It was so nice chatting with you the other day. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I am so grateful to be here and serve in this community. I started my career here. I raised my children here. I am so proud of the families and the community that we represent and serve. And I'm so excited to work along all of you and with you. I'm proud of the work we're doing. I'm excited about the things we're making happen across this district. And I wanted to take a moment and make sure I said how proud I am of the team I work with here in the Mount Diablo School District. Our team, you walk down this hall, the amount of people who spend hours to serve our community is so impressive and so amazing. And so for any of you out there who would like to come see us, please do. We would love to have you volunteer your time to join us on our team. Last but not least, I would like to thank my family who, they are the ones who suffer all the time and commitment we make to our community, but they're very supportive and they love this community and they love that I work here at the Mount Diablo School
Well, I
District.
feel like I already know them, but will you introduce
Yeah,
them formally?
sure.
So like I hear so much about all of them. So yeah.
So we got Katie Allen over here. She's Cal State Long Beach.
All right.
Maddie's watching on TV up
Yeah.
at Reno.
Good.
And this is Nathan Allen. He's a freshman baseball. Well, now he's going to be a sophomore. And then this is Kevin Allen, who's a
Yeah.
small business owner here in Contra Costa and who absolutely loves his community as well. So
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay, item 11.3, a review and potential approval of certificated personnel appointment, Director, Elementary Support. It's our pleasure to bring before you this evening Ms. Erin DiMartini. Erin has been in education for almost 20 years. She began her work in the San Mateo Foster City School District down my way as a K-3 classroom teacher, community outreach coordinator, and a TOSA for 10 years at Title I elementary schools. Erin was later a vice principal at Diablo View Middle School and principal at El Monte Elementary. She's currently the MDUSD School Support Administrator for elementary schools, has a bachelor's degree in human development and education, a background in culturally responsive teaching, and a passion for creating safe and equitable educational spaces for all students. In her free time, Erin enjoys reading, being outside, trying new recipes in the kitchen, and spending time with her husband, daughter, and 3 stepsons. She's thrilled to continue to support the amazing work of the elementary team and supporting the education of our youngest scholars. With that, I leave this appointment in your hand.
Madam President, I move to approve Erin DiMartini as Director, Elementary Support.
Second.
Motion from trustee Count and a second from trustee Mayo. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right.
Dr. Clark and board members, thank you for this opportunity. Our elementary team is amazing, and I am thrilled to get to lead and support them in this new role. They are all student-centered and doing amazing work. So thank you for this opportunity. And I'm sorry, I always bring a child that's doing too much here. I'm very sorry.
Can you introduce your
Yes.
crew?
Yes, so this work is deeply personal to me. My 3 stepsons are MDUSD students. We have 2 Foothill Griffins and a Highlands Hawk. My daughter is 3 and we are counting the days until we can enroll her in TK here. And my husband is an MDUSD educator as well. So couldn't do it without them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I presume my voice could handle about 3 of these. I'm going to turn the rest over to our director, Kim Viana.
Good evening, Dr. Clark and board members.
Nice to see all of you. I am bringing forward tonight, the Human Resources Department is bringing the board's review and potential approval for the appointment of Daniel Bueller as vice principal at Valley View Middle School. Daniel began teaching in Mount Diablo 15 years ago, and both elementary and middle school. And since then, he has pursued his next career as an admin. Daniel holds a bachelor's degree in cell and molecular biology and is finishing his master's degree in educational leadership. Daniel enjoys long distance running, gardening, and adventuring with his amazing wife and children. And with that, I leave this appointment in the hands of the board.
Madam President, I move the board approve the appointment of Daniel Bueller as vice principal at Valley View Middle School.
Second.
That's a motion from trustee Mayo and a second from trustee Nzewi. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Thank you, board. And I'd also like to thank all of the administrators that have been models to me in my career as a teacher and have led me to this stage of my career. I'd like to thank my family, my friends that are watching, and my parents that are watching as well.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
At this time, the Human Resources Department is bringing for the board's review and potential approval for the appointment of Lauren Ashton as school support administrator for elementary. For the last 2 years, Lauren has served as a principal at Walnut Acres Elementary and previously was an assistant principal and a principal in the San Francisco Unified School District. Before that, she began her tenure as an elementary teacher in the San Ramon district. Lauren holds a bachelor's degree in child development. She holds a master's degree in education and teaching. She holds a master's degree in educational leadership, and she is currently working on her doctorate in educational leadership. When Lauren is not at work, she enjoys spending time with her family, attending the theater, and volunteering on the board of a Walnut Creek Ballet studio. With that, I leave this appointment in the hands of the board.
Madam President, I move to approve Lauren Ashton as school support administrator, elementary. Although I know that many of the community at Walnut Acres are very sad to lose her as principal, I'm sure they will still be connected with you and appreciate your connection to the whole Mount Diablo community.
Second.
Motion from trustee Count and a second from trustee Nzewi. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Clark and board, thank you. I'm sorry. My time at Walnut Acres was much shorter than I anticipated it being, but I am excited to bring my passion for leadership, my dedication to all of our students, and my commitment to really strong educational practices to all of our elementary schools. So I'm very excited for this opportunity. So thank you. I want to take a minute to thank my family who came also. My husband, Greg, my mom, and my aunt are all here tonight with me. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
Okay, next up. The Human Resources Department is bringing for the board's review and potential approval for the appointment of Celeste Graybill Kitts as Assistant Director, Partnerships and Multi-Tiered System of Supports. Celeste has spent 29 years as an educator in the Mount Diablo Unified School District, teaching at multiple schools such as Bel Air, Sun Terrace, and Fair Oaks. Celeste left the classroom and entered administration as a vice principal at Oak Grove and just finished her 5th year at Wren Avenue as principal. Celeste holds a bachelor's degree in liberal arts and a master's degree in educational leadership. Celeste loves to spend time with her family and traveling. She loves to garden, cook, and read anything and everything. Both Celeste's children went through Mount Diablo schools, And with that, I leave this appointment in the hands of the board.
Madam President, I move the board approve the appointment of Celeste Kitts as Assistant Director, Partnerships and Multi-Tiered Systems of Support.
And I would
Second.
like to second that. I think I've known her almost the whole 29 years that she's been working in the district. I've worked with her and glad to see her staying with us.
It's a motion from trustee Mayo and a second from trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right.
Dr. Clark, members of the board, thank you so much for this opportunity. I began at Bel Air many, many years ago, and I think the work began there as a very new teacher. I'm so excited to be part of this department because my passion is working with systems, creating inroads for our students to be successful. And I am a champion for building the bridges with equity, breaking down barriers for our students, and just making sure that all the needs of every student, whether they're general ed or special ed, is met. And I'm really excited to be part of this. And I will retire from this district, I have a feeling. But I'd like to thank my family. My husband's here, my youngest daughter, who is flying the coop this weekend, moving to Chico, and my parents, my biggest supporters. Thank you.
Bring it down again. Here we go. The Human Resources Department is bringing for the board's review and potential approval for the appointment of Miranda Romo as vice principal for Mount Diablo Elementary School. Miranda has taught 3rd and 4th grade for 19 years at the same school site in Oakland Unified School District. She served as a PTA board representative and led the school's science department and safety patrol advisor. Miranda has also served on the school site council, climate and community board, and equity and leadership teams. Miranda holds a bachelor's degree in human development and a master's degree in early childhood education. Miranda lives in Concord with her husband and 2 stepkids. In her spare time, she enjoys cooking, playing bocce, and gardening. Miranda is excited to join the MDUSD team. With that, I leave this appointment in the hands of the board.
I will make a motion to approve the appointment of Miranda Romo as the vice principal at Mount Diablo Elementary School.
Second.
A motion from trustee Mason and a second from trustee Count. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
System again. There we go.
Phew. Hi, Dr. Clark and board. Thank you for this opportunity. I actually student taught at Mount Diablo Elementary School 20 years ago, so I feel like it's full circle. I'm coming back home to the community I grew up and learn how to teach in. So I'm very excited to be a part of MDUSC. I brought with me my husband, Eric Romo, and my best friend who was executive director for Diana Dare, Stephanie Lee. Thank you.
We are so excited to welcome all these new members. We have close to 100 items on our agenda tonight. So unless you'd like to stick around, you can use this opportunity to exit. But enjoy the rest of summer, and we got a lot of work to do next year. All right, looking forward to it. Thank you. Adrian. Adrian. Adrian, will you get to the door and then walk out? Please?
All right, so next up is item 12.1, annual revision to the district strategic technology plan. It looks like we have Mr. Vargas and Mr. Sidford here.
So I'm introducing Robert. We don't have a presentation tonight, but this item is for information and it'll come back for approval. But Robert's here to answer any questions that you might have on the plan.
Yeah.
What
Thanks,
are the
Adrian.
highlights, Robert?
I appreciate that. Thank you. I always seem to follow these exciting and fun items. I happen to think the district technology plan is exciting and fun too. So I'm pleased to be here to present you with that tonight. Really, as Adrian said, I'm really mainly here to take questions. We will bring this back for ratification by you in August as the annual revision of this plan. I do want to highlight just a couple of really quick things in terms of our some achievements for this year. As you know, Measure J funded Promethean Active Panels rollout has been done very successfully. Aaron Vallejo, our tech coordinator, has led that project, and really it's been very, very well received as far as I can tell. So about, going on 1,600 panels going out to our schools, and we now have a standardized AV setup, which is fantastic, much easier to support, and really something that is a really good step forward, I think, for our technology plan. We're continuing with security camera upgrades, which obviously assist with student and staff safety issues. We are moving towards, we've actually deployed a much more robust approach to our student data privacy issues with site privacy services, and making sure that we have agreements in place with vendors to ensure that they're treating our data as carefully as we treat it. Which we think is fantastic. And then we also have been, as you're aware, initiating our network upgrades currently at 4 sites and expanding to another 6 that are in the planning stages, with further going beyond that. We anticipate that Silverwood will be the first completed, hopefully by the end of the summer. And we'll be giving you much more information about that later on. Based on that, I'm going to leave it in your hands, and really what we're asking for is I'm happy to take any feedback or questions tonight, or happy to take any other feedback or questions that you have via other channels that you have to me, and we'll be able to incorporate that into the plan as necessary. So I'll leave it in your hands. Thank you.
I don't think my question's hard. Just knowing Chromebooks have been in students' hands for a really long time, and it says that you're identify end of life dates. That's kind of dark, but like, how are we determining the end of life dates? As I think we're coming upon 4. Some people had it in their hands for 4 years, which shouldn't be the end of life. But I know how these modern day electronics they're basically disposable. So.
And that's a very good question, actually. Yeah, this is something we talk about virtually every day. We obviously have about 29,000 of these out there, give or take, and actually give a few, a few more than that, because obviously we want to make sure that as instructional materials, students have access to a Chromebook at all times. You're absolutely correct. Students taking home devices means that there's a little more wear and tear on these. You may have seen the announcement by Google that they've extended the auto, what do they call it? The auto update. I can't remember the actual term for it, but basically the expiry date of Chromebooks into the future. What we actually see, though, is that Chromebooks don't typically last that long. They are, I hate to use the term disposable, but they really are really about the most inexpensive computer you can get.
They're not as good as my 20-year-old washing machine.
That is probably
Right.
true. Yeah, they're not intended to be a 10-year device. So we have developed a refresh schedule, and obviously I work with Adrian to try to identify funding for that. And we do refresh these each year. The board approved recently an additional 9,000 of these for this upcoming school year, and we're moving towards a deployment where it's basically every second, sixth, and ninth grader will receive a new issued Chromebook, with the idea that they carry that through their experience at that school, and then when they move to their next level, that they'd be issued with a new Chromebook. So that's the intent.
I just wanted to say thank you for following this plan all the way through, like from the beginning when we first hit COVID and we needed to go one-to-one. I mean, we've come so far since then. And I really appreciate the way that that you've done the long-term planning so that we do have a plan for how we're going to continue this forward, how we're going to keep up with technology and make sure that it's equitable, that all of our students are able to access these. And also that that it's starting to include the effective use of AI tools for teaching and learning as well. That's something we're all going to have to keep up with. And then just into the future, I think one of the things that we as a school district are going to need to really plan for is how are we going to make sure that all students actually learn computer programming, not just how to use Google Docs and that sort of thing, and be safe on the internet, but really to be the creators of the future. So yeah, as we move forward academically, I think that's going to be a piece that will need to be incorporated moving forward. Thanks.
I'm just interested in some information around the Promethean boards, how their use may have increased throughout the year, and the effectiveness or the comfort level that the instructors feel with those boards.
That's a great question. We have not done a program evaluation of this. I'll be honest with you. It's something we could look into potentially with the assistance of our research department to assist with that. As something I'll take on advisement for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for especially for the highlights for this year and for answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
All right, so we move to 12.2, fentanyl awareness and facts and tools to save a life report of events for the 2023 to 2024 school year.
Yeah, I just want to take a second and just thank Ms. Pete and her team. They have really done just a Herculean effort traveling throughout the district. These are very emotional presentations, but they absolutely need to happen. And so I am just forever thankful that, that they have shared so much with our community, with our students, with our staff, with parents, with kids from other districts. Long as folks are hearing the message, I'm just very pleased with that. So without any further ado, the team.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Clark, board members, and Mount Diablo Unified School District community. We just want to give you a report on our presentations and what we've done this school year. You'll hear from a variety of the presenters that have been part of our presentations here this evening.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Johnson.
No, the microphone right there.
Thank you. I'm Mary Ann Johnson. I'm one of the credentialed school nurses for our school district. The fentanyl events that we put on all year support LCAP goal number 3, which states that parents, family, and community will be informed, engaged, and empowered as partners with Mount Diablo Unified to support student learning and achievement. Our goal is to educate families and provide naloxone and training so that we can save lives.
Good
Good evening. My name is Emily Justice. First, I am a proud graduate of Mount Diablo Unified School District. Second, I am a manager in the Student Programs Department at the Contra Costa County Office of Education. And I have the privilege of talking about one of my favorite things, which is partnerships and collaboration and community support. So these events were certainly successful due to the leadership from district staff, but it really was above and beyond anything that we've seen because of the support of the community, including elected officials like Assemblyman, a member Tim Grayson, County Superintendent of Schools Lynn Mackey, of course, Dr. Clark, and as well as board members. Also involvement of community like Concord Police Department, Pleasant Hill Police Department, sheriffs, many community organizations, but most critical was the Contra Costa Medication, Education, and Disposal Safety Coalition. You'll be hearing from the coordinator in just a moment. Other district leaders, including school social work specialists, counselors, school nurses, who really were able to speak to all of the supports that are currently in place to support students. And then we were proud to be a partner through our tobacco use prevention education program, linking with our site level coordinators, teachers, counselors, as well as our student leaders, and also the Department of Justice, who you'll be hearing from. And lastly, we want to acknowledge the support of those families and friends who have lost loved ones to this epidemic. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Delora, and I am Linda Pete's Administrative Secretary. I've been in this district working for almost 33 years. I want to share some data with you today. We have been to 10 sites in the district, 5 high schools, 4 middle schools, and 1 elementary. We're proud that we have passed this information to 742 members of our community and pleased to have given Narcan to 580. That's 580 people that can now save a life. On a related note, I wish I knew about Narcan earlier. My brother died from an accidental fentanyl overdose in 2017. So being here today with this team is a great honor, knowing that we're helping save lives. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariela Sanding, and I'm the coordinator for the Contra Costa County Meds Coalition. We're a community-based coalition funded under Contra Costa Health's Alcohol and Other Drug Services. And my position in this series of events was to really bring the education pertaining to the fentanyl crisis, as well as provide overdose rescue training to all that attend and leave with naloxone or Narcan in their hands. So I'm going to give sort of a condensed version of what I give. Usually I talk for about half an hour, but I won't keep you that long. So starting with some national data in the year 2022, over 109,000 people in the US died from a drug-related overdose. This includes every single type of drug, even alcohol, which averages to about 300 deaths per day due to some sort of substance. Of those deaths, almost 83,000 of those involved some type of opioid or painkiller. And in Contra Costa alone, there have been 183 opioid-related overdose deaths here in 2022. I also want to mention that between the years 2019 and 2021, we've seen a 109% increase in youth overdose death, and that's primarily due to the fentanyl crisis. So of course, we explain just how dangerous and huge of an issue fentanyl is. It's considered a synthetic opioid, which means it's completely man-made and is basically the strongest opioid that can be prescribed in 2024. And it's usually prescribed for treating really severe amounts of pain and at really low and small dosages, no more than 20 to 50 micrograms at a time. However, we're seeing fentanyl show up in the street drug supply because it's cheap and it's very easily accessible to either make themselves or buy in bulk, again, for that cheap cost. And that's really what's driving that increase in opioid overdose deaths that we've seen in the past 5 years. The issue with using fentanyl to lace drugs that are being sold on the street is that the amount it takes to actually cause a fentanyl overdose is just 2 milligrams. So you can see on the screen here, That's about the size of Abe Lincoln's beard on the penny. It barely fits on the tip of a sharpened pencil, and it's about a fraction of a raindrop. At this point, I would go into how to save a life through the use of naloxone, which is the life-saving medication used to reverse an overdose to any opioid, including fentanyl. Really, the number one thing you want to look for is a loss of consciousness and slow, shallow breathing. The picture on the screen shows an example of the opioid overdose rescue kits that we distributed. As Jennifer noted, we distributed almost 600 of these throughout the school year. It included 2 doses of naloxone, a CPR face shield, and a pair of gloves. I feel incredibly honored to work with this team and to be able to bring this information and these resources to the community. So I thank you all for having us here tonight.
It's all fentanyl. That's like your line. I think.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Rezai. I'm a federal prosecutor in San Francisco. I work for the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is a component of the United States Department of Justice. I'm now on our Special Prosecutions Unit, where I prosecute civil rights violations, public corruption offenses, and white-collar matters. But before that, for 5 years, I was on our Narcotics Unit and managed the unit for the last 3 years. Here to tell you the truth about fentanyl. One thing that folks don't realize is that this has completely overtaken our drug supply. 90% of the time when someone suffers a overdose of fentanyl, they have no idea that they were taking fentanyl to begin with. It is in everything. Xanax, Percocet, oxycodone, you name it. And the greatest misconception is that these pills, these other drugs, still contain alprazolam, still contain oxycodone. No, there's no more alprazolam. There's no more oxycodone. It is all fentanyl, and it's being pressed into pills, which people think are safe. And this is why you're seeing so many overdoses. This is why you're seeing 110,000 people now die a year. To put that in perspective, we go back to 2021 when you have complete statistics from the CDC. That year you had about 107,000 people die from drug overdoses. That same year, there were 21,000 people who died from firearms homicides. The point is, this is killing 5 times as many people as guns. And what we do know is that this is in our schools. We know this because we hear it from the students. Hey, pills are being passed around. And you're hearing it not only from high school students, but middle school students. Next slide. Thank you.
June 12th, 2022. 2 years ago today, I lost my beautiful boy. Our youth, our teens in our district and all over, they're suffering from more anxiety and trauma than any time in our world's history. Without proper help, these kids seek alternate means to feel better. I have a video here from some of my son's best friends. It's just a minute, it's super short, but I want you to hear what they have to say. You have to move it back. I don't know why it always starts partway through.
As like a bigger brother. He was in the same journey.
Carson was my missing piece.
Carson was someone that I almost looked up to as like a bigger brother. He was in the same journey as me. He made me feel very safe.
I knew him since 5th grade. He was my best friend.
I got a call from my friend and he was like, Carson died. I still like replay that moment and that phone call in my head, and it doesn't feel real. Like none of this feels real.
I think the world lost what could have been for Carson's future. I mean, he'd always talk about having a family and being a dad.
What got lost in your life when Carson died?
Still doesn't feel real, but it feels like I've lost a part of me. I don't even know how to answer that. There's a part of me that, doesn't always feel safe.
His death, I'd say, just makes you appreciate more of the little things that kind of just change your perspective on life and how short it could be.
Carson was my missing piece.
Carson was someone that I almost looked up to as like a bigger brother. He was on the same journey as me. He made me feel very safe.
I knew him since 5th grade. He was my best friend.
I got a call from my friend, and he was like, Carson died. I still like replay that moment and that phone call in my head, and it doesn't feel real. Like none of this feels real.
I think the world lost what could have been for Carson's future. I mean, he'd always talk about having a family and being a dad.
What got lost in your life when Carson died?
Still doesn't feel real, but it feels like I've lost a part of me. I don't even know how to answer that. There's a part of me that, doesn't always feel safe.
His death, I'd say, just makes you appreciate more of the little things that kind of just change your perspective on life and how short it could be.
You always think like, what more could I have done? You can't hold a gun up to everyone and say, no, you can't do drugs. You just have to educate people.
There's been 7 students from our district that have passed from fentanyl. One is not pictured here. Unfortunately, there's a new picture. This beautiful girl, Jasmine, and her parents are sitting right here. These kids are athletes, scholars, chefs. They left their moms, they left their grandmas. We've educated our district for a year. We've probably saved some lives, but we lost one. So we need to do more. We need to do more and more and more. We don't want to lose any more kids. So whatever it takes, we need to do it.
Linda Pete, Assistant Director in Student Service. Another part of our presentation is we invite students from the various schools to come up on stage and be part of a panel. And Kelly will ask them questions about what drugs or alcohol they're seeing on campus, what do kids say, what do schools need to do, what do parents need to hear. At all of our presentations, we had, except for when we went to Meadow Homes, we didn't have any of the elementary school students participate, but at all of the other campuses, we had middle schools and or high school students that participated, and we will continue that with our presentations. Next slide, please. Where we're going, our goal next year, starting around this school year, this upcoming school year, starting in around October, we're going to work with Diablo V Middle School, El Dorado Middle School, Foothill Middle School, either Sequoia and or Valley View. We're going to reach out to Olympic High School, and then maybe we went to Riverview Middle School, but we want to also go back in the Bay Point area. So we'll be reaching out to all of those schools to see when we can schedule dates to make presentations to the community. We are so thankful for all of you supporting us, being at the presentations, and helping us to do these presentations and save lives. Thank you so much.
I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for sharing your stories and for doing these presentations. Being, as a parent in the community, as a school board member, I originally thought, oh, we just need to provide, Narcan to our school sites. But after seeing your presentations, I really learned so much about how, we all need to carry it ourselves and have it available at all times and really be sharing out that message. So thank you.
You want to give you all an opportunity if you would like to go now. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Ms. Pete and your team. Thank you. We will definitely do it again next year. President?
Okay. All right, so that moves us to board member reports. That was Trustee Count. Thank you for speaking for us. It's hard to not get choked up. Trustee Mason, do you have a report tonight?
We follow that. That's I'm glad we're continuing to do that. It's been a very busy time since our last meeting, and I wrote them down because the last meeting I forgot one of the meetings I went to, and I got in trouble because it was Dr. Stuckey Smith's ABAR committee, and they had a very, very engaging conversation about how we hire and being more intentional about it. So I'll just go through these really quick. May 9th was the Black Excellence Awards, which was a great event. We may need to get a bigger venue in the future. It gets bigger and bigger every year. She heard me. Thank you. May 17th, Sequoia Elementary. I went there and listened to the student presentations about for their IB program. And I was really taken with the one about electric vehicles, and the kids knew all the answers because I had recently bought a vehicle and I had to figure it out on my own. I wish I'd have been there the year before. May 18th, I visited Rio Vista's food forest that they have, that they're putting next to their school. And it was on a weekend. They were out there getting that, and they were kind enough to share some of their milkweed with us because we've been trying to grow it in our garden. So thank you to Will and Jorge for that. On May 20th, College Now, the student presentations, which we always enjoy going to those. The students tell us about issue that they tried to tackle, and we get to grill them on it. And they always rise to the occasion. Also that day we had the celebration of new teachers. There's a name for it, I forget it, the Foliquium, which was very, very interesting and very active. They were very engaged, and I'm like, this is good. This is going to be interacting with our kids. And that was followed by the parent advisory meeting where Dr. Clark had to solo it and did a great job of presenting. I think you should do it all the time. May 21st, Rio Vista had their open house. I don't know what is going on out there, but every time Rio Vista has an event, it is standing room only, which is really good to see. May 22nd, College Now had their graduation, the one on the DVC campus, and 95% of those students had been accepted into four-year colleges, and several had already achieved their AA. May 23rd, Northgate, I went there to listen to the senior projects. There were 6 or 7 presentations that I listened to. They were all well done. After that, I went over to the DLAC meeting where we had a celebration for Carmen, and it was at Oak Grove, and they had mariachi band. It was a very fun occasion. May 24th, attended a parent meeting at Riverview Middle School and visited a horticulture class there. May 28th, Adult Ed Celebration of Achievement for Project Access. And then we started the graduation tour with May 29th and 30th, Northgate, College Park, and Concord graduated that week. June 1st, after attending Mr. Mims' service in the morning, which he will be missed from our meetings for keeping us on task, but we'll know when he will be walking in here if we do something wrong. And I went to the Olympic graduation. June 3rd and 4th was the Mount Diablo High School and Ignacio Valley High School graduations. June 5th was the counseling showcase, which was at Willow Creek, which was very informative. Saturday, June 8th was the adult ed graduation, which is always a really touching one because these parents have, most of them are parents or students that have gone through a lot and they've really invested the time to get their diploma or their GAD. And then yesterday was the ODAT graduation. So it's my favorite time of the year, but very busy.
Trustee Mayo, do you have a report this evening?
Of course I do. But I think I'm repeating much of what Mrs. Mason shared with us. I attended the graduations that she attended. We were on the stage or cheering loudly at all of them together. I attended the May 16th Measure J quarterly meeting on May 17th. I went to the Pine Hollow PTSA meeting where they had a successful election of officers. So we're excited about that. In addition to the College Now presentations and the TIS Colloquium on May 20th, I attended the Contra Costa County School Boards Association meeting in the evening. On May 23rd, I went to the California May Revised Budget Workshop provided by the Contra Costa County Office of Education and Capital Advisor in collaboration with AXA and CSBA and some others. And of course, the messaging was cautionary for school districts in regards to the budget and different things that are going on in Sacramento. The evening, of course, was the celebration at DLAC of Carmen Garces and Catherine Fireman. So we have a little sadness, but we also have some joy. On May 28th, Miss Mason and I went to the Adult Education Access Celebration. This is a program that Mount Diablo has in adult education where members of our community participate for 2 years at the adult education program, and then they transfer to DVC so that they can get their career or earn credentials for their early childhood career credential. And it's the 16th cohort that Mount Diablo School District has, graduated to DVC. So I think that's something for us to be very proud of because we're building that support for families within our own community through our outstanding adult education program. On June 3rd, we went to the Pride flag raising at Highlands Elementary School and here at Dent Center. And then I too was at the counseling support team showcase, and that was outstanding. That concludes my report. Plus, I'm sorry, the graduations were fantastic. I did want to say thank all of the families as well as the school staff for supporting our students all year long and providing excellent graduation ceremonies that focused on students this year. And that was very important. And I also want to thank the Mount Diablo Print Shop and Tom Sullivan for the printing of all the graduation programs. I don't think folks realize they are printed in-house. Each of the programs is unique, and the print shop provided the highest quality programs that are forever keepsakes for our families. I'm done.
Thank you for those additions to your report. They were important. Trustee Nzewi.
I'll add to Trustee Mason, who said maybe the Black Excellence Awards needs a new venue. I could not attend this year, but I've talked to Dr. Francis since then and brainstormed new venues. And I put a thing in his head, and we're gonna make it happen. But I'm not gonna say what it is out loud yet. I'd also like to mention Mr. Willie Mims. So at his memorial service, his son got up there and he was great and hilarious, and you could tell he was raised by Willie Mims. But he said something that was inspiring to me. He said, if you knew my dad, you knew he didn't walk away from the smoke. In fact, he usually brought the smoke. He'd walk through the smoke, whatever. And that's why how he keeps school districts and school boards and on their toes and doing right by children. And so that just inspired me. Like, we can't walk away from the smoke. We're not, like, Dr. Clark would like us to not bring the smoke, so we try and like go under, but we still do it without, we do the, you know what I'm trying to say. So like, he's such a legacy to all of us. And I'm so thankful to have gotten to know him over these last 4 years and to have been inspired by him and to continue to be inspired by him. There's one other thing, because you all said everything. Oh, besides graduations, one that wasn't mentioned is the bridge graduation. So I was at the bridge, and yeah, it overlapped with another evening one. So I was at bridge, and so flat out congratulations to every graduate, and just to get it out there, including bridge.
Trustee Count?
All right. So, yes, there were many things going on, busy times. I'm not going to make a list, but I just want to say, I think that I agree, the graduations this year have just really had that focus, had some incredible student speakers. I know one at Ignacio Valley High School was an immigrant student who is fairly new to this country and to speaking English, and she got up there and did a full speech in English. It was just incredible sharing her story, and I just loved also how so many of them were fully bilingual. The programs, the presentations, and especially usually it's the students who are able to by themselves speak in both languages and do those kinds of presentations. And that's our future, which is so exciting. And I just appreciate all of the uplifting that we've been doing out at our sites of all of our students, the various cultural celebrations, the rainbow flag raisings, the Clayton Pride Parade this year was just bigger than ever. People from all over Contra Costa County. We had our school boards team there from all different school boards as usual, but we ran into so many teachers and students from our district. And people who said that they were really heartened to run into their teachers there. It made them feel seen and included. So that was really wonderful. And what else? I think, and the gardens. I have my fava beans that I planted from Growing Healthy Kids, and they're really tall. It's very, very exciting. I've got fava beans growing. So this is just a really exciting time of year, and I just especially want to thank you, Dr. Clark, for your leadership and setting the example, and for all of us as a whole district to bringing us all together, and with that focus on students and really including everyone and respecting everyone and making sure that everyone feels seen and valued and a part of things. So thank you.
Trustee Barrios?
And compared to what you guys have been doing, I've just been existing. No. I'm mainly focused on finals, so I haven't been doing that much. But not only have I graduated from high school, but I graduated as a medical assistant. So I'm ready to work. Apart from that, I attended the College Park Choir, their last one, which was amazing, and I got to see Trustee Nzewi's daughter perform, which was angelic. It was so, oh my gosh, so many talented people. Well, that's pretty much it.
right. So I was able to go to some similar celebrations. I'll just mention that the Black Excellence Awards was very well attended. So I am very excited about the possibility of there being a bigger venue. And the TISP celebration, it was great to see like our our newer teachers being so well supported and so well celebrated. That's always a really, really fun event at the end of the year. I was able to go to graduation ceremonies for Concord High, Mount Diablo High, and Mount Diablo Adult Education. They were kind of, every ceremony kind of had its own sort of tone, but kind of the things that I noticed that were consistent were kind of the ceremonies, which has been mentioned earlier, were so student-centered. The student speeches were the biggest highlight for me, and very well attended by the staff of each school. So it was just really evident kind of the level of support and dedication from our teams at our school site. So that was really neat to see. Also was really glad to be able to attend the Pride flag raising ceremony at Highlands. I want to thank Trustee Cound for organizing the group of school board members to attend and walk in the Clayton Pride Parade. That was a really wonderful experience. So thank you for your leadership in that. And then I was also able to attend the Counseling and Support Team Showcase. And so there's a lot of great information about the feeder patterns and support, counseling support center, counseling support for each of the feeder patterns. And I know that the posters are now on display in the enrollment center. So if you happen to be there, check them out. And then last night I attended the One Day at a Time graduation ceremony at YV. And I was just really impressed by our students and their families, and just how well received that program has been, and how there's such an incredible kind of sense of belonging that you can just see in the students, even if, when they were asked to speak, they said, no, thank you, many of them, but you could just tell that they were, that program is really helping them connect to each other and to their campus. And that was really, really cool to see. That's all I have this evening.
So I have a couple presentations on data, but sort of before I jump into that, I just I want to echo some of the same sentiments that the board shared, just with the conclusion of this year. In my letter, I did talk about this being an extremely successful year, because as a district, I really feel that we are unified in really focusing on what our kids need, and that's the only reason why I do this work, is to support young people. And so to be able to work with the governance team that has that laser focus. Now, of course, we have to take care of our community, and we want to make sure that the employees who are serving students have what they need. And I think that we've shown our commitment to both the communities and to our employees. And so, just within life, there's always going to be ups and downs. And I think that as an organization, that we are embracing both the ups and the downs, and not passing blame, not just shuttering our responsibilities or whatnot. We're really taking them head on, and just kind of like in the words of Willie Mims, we are the smoke, and we don't run from it. We kind of lean into it, and I will miss having Willie Mims hold me accountable, and making sure that I'm serving all kids, and that within our LCAPs and our site plans, we're calling out our deficiencies, and we're coming up with a plan on how we're going to address them. I think that's something that's very important within his legacy. But I also want to thank the team that I work very closely with. That's our DENT team, at really supporting our school sites and making sure that they have what they need to serve our students. So I'm going to share some data in my reports here. At our next meeting, I'll share all the pictures and stuff like that. We have tons of pictures. But just lastly, the graduation ceremonies, everyone that I went to this year, there's this special connection that's coming out between our teachers, our classified staff, and our administrators with our students. And I think that's the biggest achievement that I've seen this year, is that we as the adults are really focusing on those adult student relationships. And I think if we continue that, we will learn that it makes our jobs much more fulfilling, and we're much more happy in what we're doing. And then it actually works in achieving our goals with our students. So our students really become more engaged. They feel heard. We heard from the fentanyl folks earlier that our students are under more anxiety, more pressure than ever in our time. And that, you know, it could be social media, it could be, you know, our political landscape, it could be the racial tension that's going on, the gender things that are happening within, you know, that are affecting our young people. But now more than ever, as the adults, we have to really, you know, create those relationships with our kids so that they fully understand that we care about them and that we are here for them. So with that said, I'm gonna go through these quickly. I present these because we then post them online. So anyone out there, community, staff, the State Department, whoever can look at our data, can break it down. They can send me questions, or they may get a better picture of why it is that we do the things that we do. And so hopefully we tell a story with our data. So the first point I'm going to hit is attendance. And again, we have all kinds of programs and so many dedicated professionals within the district, but if our kids aren't here, then it really is all for naught. So I really like to focus on attendance. This is a bar graph, and I know I explain this all the time, but the state makes us break up our student groups into ethnicities, and then also our groups of students and the way they're labeled by the state. So this is a bar graph that talks about that. Here it is, and just in another format, and this really gives each ethnicity. We have our Black African American, we have our American Indian Alaskan, we have Asian, Hispanic Latino, Native Hawaiian, white, 2 or more races. Then we go into the student groups, and those are students from low socioeconomic environments, English learners, and students with disabilities. And you can see the grand total at the bottom. So we have 29,000 students within our district, and then you can see the number of students which fall into each of those categories. Here, obviously, blue is for 95% attendance rate or greater. If you are chronically absent, that means that you have missed 10% of the school year regardless. So our year is 180 days. So students who are chronically absent, that would be anyone below the green. Those are students who've missed 10% or more of the school year. So we'll break it down a little bit more. This is our foster youth, and we're mandated by the state to make sure that we call out our foster youth and that we design programs and resources, and should be within our LCAP of how we're supporting our foster youth. And so we can see we have approximately 72, and you can see the numbers there of our foster youth that have attended 95% of the school year and all the way down. Here is our HOPE students, and those are our students who are experiencing homelessness. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're living outside, but they don't have a permanent home, couch surfing, multiple families maybe living under one roof or whatnot, but these are students who qualify for HOPE. And again, you can see the numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the green and the blue, and so that is going to give us upwards to 56%. More than half of our HOPE students are attending school regularly. And you can see below the number that are not. Obviously, the less than 80%, we have a big number there, and so that's really what we want to focus on and make sure those kids are getting to school. So you can see district-wide, 80% of our students have a 90% or higher attendance rate. So that is good. We want to celebrate that, and I want to thank the folks who really work to make sure that our students are coming to school each and every day. More importantly, noticing when students don't come to school and maybe asking them like, hey, everything all right? We missed you yesterday, and things like that. But by demographics, our Asian students are leading the way with 87. Our white students are next with 86%. 2 or more races is 83. Hispanic is 74. Our African American students are 69. American Indian, Alaskan Native are 60, and Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander are 59%. Every one of those demographic groups should be at 80%. Should be at 90%. And so you see we have 2 student groups that are real close to that, but all of our students should be attending school regularly. And then when you go by program, students with socioeconomically disadvantaged students, 73%, EL, 73, students with IEP, 72%, foster youth, 64, Hope, 56. I'm not going to go through each one with that much detail, but I did just want to touch on that. So now we've broken it up into elementary, and you can see folks can go on here and they can look at their individual schools. They can see, we don't have it broken down on this report in terms of ethnicities or student groups. You can just see overall the schools, but you can see our schools that have high attendance rates. We have chronic, which is red. So those are students who missed 10% or more of the year. So I would expect that the principals of these schools are leading the efforts to identify who those students are in the red and are making sure that we're meeting with them and we're seeing what they need to make sure that they're coming to school each and every day. But we have some schools that are doing some really fabulous jobs in terms of attendance. These are the rest of our elementary schools. I'm not going to, go through it, but I mean, just obviously, you look at the high numbers. You don't want to have the high numbers. So you see, we have some schools in the 30s. Sunrise is kind of an outlier there at 55%, but we have a 34% on there. We have a 39%, so on and so on. We want to see single digits or less. Single digits, 10% or less on all of those. And then we go into middle school. You can see, obviously we want those numbers as low as possible. So I see one middle school at 9%. That's great. I see one at 11%. That's great. But, in some of our other areas, we need some help. Foothill stands out 5%. And, Diablo View 12%. So again, this is our chronic absentee rates. And then we go to high school. When you have a Crossroads, Crossroads only has 17 students. They're young students who have children. So that's one of the reasons why there are equity multipliers. They're part of our equity multiplier. And so you can see that number is obviously stands out and is extremely high. And you can also see Olympic, which is at 78%, which is high, and Prospect. So those are all our alternative schools. But the expectation for them is just like everyone else. We need them in school each and every day. But we understand that there's insinuating circumstances. We want to understand what those are, and we want to break down those barriers so those students can be in school each and every day. And you can see how the rest of our comprehensive sites have done. All right, that concludes the attendance report. The next report I'm going to share is our SEL, emotional learning survey results. And so again, we started this during the pandemic when we wanted to have some way to kind of measure the how our students were responding to the SEL components. So here goes the SEL framework. You have self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And we have questions that are related to each of those, and we have students rank themselves on how they perform in those different areas. And so this gives kind of the cadence in which we give the survey. And so let's see, SEL survey is used to address LCAP goal number 1, and it's used to measure the levels of students' SEL competencies. So let's see how our students did on SEL. So again, we have our groups broken down. This is actually broken down in elementary, but as we go here, district-wide, 91% of our elementary school students reported a mid to high SEL reporting level. So that's good, right? So they have taken the survey, they've ranked themselves, and 91% reported mid to high. So that's where we want every one of those groups is to be at 91%. So you can see our Pacific Islanders are at 93, white students are at 93, 2 or more races, 91, Asian, 91, Hispanic, 90, African American, 87, American Indian and Alaskan Native, 75%. So overall, I mean, those numbers are high. So I think when we talk about how our students, of course, we can have students who are going through trauma, we can have students who are experiencing different things, but this is kind of that self-regulation, their relationships, their decision-making and things of that nature. So these numbers are pretty favorable. And again, this is elementary school. You can see that by programs, you can see over on the side, all are in the 80s. I'd like them to be in the 90s, but they're in the 80s. And as we go to middle school, again, 80, the number comes down a little bit. So now 87% of our middle school students reported mid to high SEL reporting levels. And so you can see how our different groups respond there. And we've had some flip-flopping. We've now, foster youth are all the way down to 60%. Special education are at 79. So of course we want to bring those numbers up. And then we go to high school. I'm guessing that in high school it's going to go down a little bit more because you got more challenges. Students are going through different changes, things of that nature. But 80% of our high school students reported. So everyone ought to be at 80%, but they're not. So you see two or more races. You see Asian, you see white, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, African American, Hispanic, American Indian, Alaskan Native. And then you can see our programs. Glad to see over at foster youth at 85% and socioeconomically disadvantaged at 80, but we don't want to get the rest of those up. And then this is just overall, I want to thank Dr. Chenaway for putting this together, because this just gives like a little summary. So our TK to 1 students, the highest percentage of students in the middle to high levels were relationship skills. So our little ones really value the relationships. And the lowest, which is not a surprise, self-management. If you've worked in kindergarten or whatnot, first grade, and responsible decision making. I would think that would be in the high school, but that's a different thing. But then you have your middle, your 2 through 5, highest percentage for social awareness, which kind of makes sense. Like they're really becoming socially aware of themselves, their friends, what group they kind of fit into, and then the other one is that self-awareness is, not like where they fit in socially, but it's really as they're starting to really notice themselves. So those are things. So we have like a whole SEL frameworks that we have available. So those, if you're looking at this data and you teach 2nd to 5th grade, like those might be some things you want to do some activities on. You want to talk to kids about that. Secondary, students with the highest social awareness, makes sense. They're very into their peer group and how they're perceived. And then their lowest is those relationship skills. So that, and then it also it has our items in there as well, how it's asked. And I really like the transparency that we are here. In some other parts of the country and maybe some other parts of California, they've kind of demonized and weaponized social emotional learning, but really, don't see, like, when I have a problem, I know there's an adult at school who can help me, like, or I can ask for help from myself or a friend, or I came to school prepared for the day. So I think, putting this on there might ease the fears that some parents may have or whatnot. So I won't go over all these, but they're there, and I would encourage you all to check those out. And I mean, we just have a ton of info here. I don't want to take all night. All right, Kyle, the next presentation. All right, the next one is on suspensions. And again, I say this all the time. I am not saying that we can't suspend students. I never tell principals not to suspend students. Students absolutely need to be suspended at particular times. However, I want to make sure that we are doing everything possible to prevent the suspensions from happening. And then also having the mindset to know that just putting a kid out of school for 1 to 5 days is not necessarily going to solve the problem. So you have to dig deeper and try to get to the root cause of what the problems are. So, however, I know that there are some out there in our field who use suspension as a tier 1 intervention. and it really should not be a tier 1 intervention. We're going to find out who does that. So again, it's broken down into groups. You can see the amount of students in each in each ethnic group that we have within the district that's represented. So you can see like our largest population is our Hispanic Latino students. Our second largest population are our white students. Our smallest population is our students, American Indian or Alaskan. So foster youth, we have 72 students. 11% of them have been suspended. That comes out to a total of 8. Of our homeless students who are categorized as homeless, out of, we have 84 of those students have been suspended at least one time, comes to 11%. So if you, this is our suspension rate. So 5% of all students have at least one suspension. So 5%, that's what it ought to be for every one of these groups. It ought to be 5%. So as you look at Asian, 2%. You look at white, 3%. 2 or more races, 3%. American Indian, Alaska Native, 3%. Hispanic, 6%. Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, 8%. Black African American, 12%. You go to the next one. Socioeconomically disadvantaged, 7%. EL, 7%. Special ed, 9%. Foster youth, 11%. Hope, 11%. So as people wonder why we do certain things, why we have like a focal scholar program, why we do, equity, we use an equity mindset, why we do things like Black excellence and things like that. Why is it, and it's a rhetorical question, why are we suspending 12% African American students or 11% homeless students, 11% foster youth students, and other groups that have way more students is 2, 3%. So those are things that we are working on. And, I'm not gonna, again, the reason why we're here is for the kids. So as long as I'm superintendent, I'm going to work on every way possible to try to find other means of corrections besides suspension. And if we truly are an equitable district, if we have equality, then like our data should prove that. So it's here. You don't believe me, you can look at it, you can look at the numbers. So elementary schools, very low suspensions in elementary schools. It says here total number of students, and then you see in green, you can see the number of suspensions or percentages. I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but the elephant in the room is that our schools where there's higher poverty have more suspensions, and the schools where there's less poverty have least suspensions. So why is that? Why? Waiting for that answer, and so that's what you're gonna see play out. On this sheet here. So it happens. We're working on it. If you fight, if you make threats, things like that, it's gonna result in a suspension. But things like wearing a hat, things like these subjective type things that we have, those are things that we really want to curb. So we go to middle school. It's a little different here. You can see the percentages get a little higher. I know I've already asked a question about home hospital, how those students can be suspended, but Dr. Aguili answered that for me, so I'm going to go into that. But some things that, are concerning to me, Pine Hollow, they have 554 kids and 105 have been suspended. That's a problem. Riverview, they have 723 students, 121 have been suspended. Like that's a problem. So hopefully as we're doing our end of the year presentations, I can hear from those principals, I can hear what they have in place to address that. It's not just the principal, right? It's the whole group, right? You know, I saw a quote today somewhere, but like it means like every single person contributes to your culture and climate. So like it's not just on the principal, it's not just on the yard supervisor, it's everybody. Everyone creates that environment. So what can we do to you know bring those numbers down? Because the more students are out of school, they fall farther behind, they get disconnected. I mean, like the research is not favorable in the after effects of suspension. Kids don't get suspended and then all of a sudden completely stop that behavior and then become model students and stuff like that. That's not how it works. What creates a model student is what I talked about earlier, is about creating those relationships and understanding your students, understanding your families, understanding what's going on in the classroom, ways that we can make those engaging, making students feel successful, things like that, and teaching them the skills that they don't know. And I'm imagining because of our SEL stuff, like a lot of this stuff falls on relationships. Like how are students relating to one another? How are they dealing with conflict? So let's see how high school is going. High school, you know, again, you got older students, you got just lots of more opportunities for students to get into things. You know, obviously a huge concern of mine is Mount Diablo High School with 224 suspensions. I really want to shout out Ignacio Valley High School with 88 suspensions. You know, they're down to 8%. They used to lead the way in suspensions. They were right along there with you know, Mount Diablo High, and Mount Diablo High has almost 500, you know, 400 more kids than them. So those are just some things we have to work on. But you know, things happen. Northgate has 54 suspensions. You know, Concord High has 48. So again, these are suspensions. You know, it's necessary data. I'm not hiding this data. I'm putting it out there. Whoever wants to read it and check it out. And if you want to email me some suggestions, some ideas, or find out what, not necessarily the board, you guys see this stuff, I'm speaking to the public or whoever's watching out there. I'm open to looking at the latest research or seeing what happens. We, you know, clearly, sometimes when there's an event, the word that gets out there is that we turned a blind eye to students misbehaving. Clearly, we're not turning a blind eye to that. However, we do apply the rules differently to different groups of students. And that's been factual. And those are things that we're going to continue to work on and continue to try to change. So that's our data. I'm open to any questions from the board. If not, I will have a much more at the next board meeting. I'm gonna share some academic data and I'll share a bunch of highlights and stuff from the year. But I wanted to get this data out. I want to thank Dr. Chenaway for getting me that data. And at least we have readable data that we can look at. Now I can compare it to last year and stuff like that. But ever since the pandemic, like the years are, you know, they've been different. So this has been a solid year. So I'm not saying this is our baseline, but this is a solid year, and you could really assess how we're doing as a district. Any questions, comments, concerns, directives? Yes.
Do you know, you've shared before in previous reports, but what are the top 2 or 3 reasons for suspension? You sort of mentioned like willful defiance is popular. Fighting obviously is popular.
Yeah, fighting and stuff like that are the things that are leaders. Our leaders. Willful defiance is not something that is one of our leaders. But at the high school level, it's fighting and drugs. Fighting, drugs, alcohol, those types of things. All that could be solved with like restorative practices and like, you know, active supervision and more extracurricular activities and, you know, drug education. We got counselors, we got psychologists, like, you know, we heard from the fentanyl thing in the video, right? Or maybe one of the people said it, but like when you have students who are dealing with stuff and they don't have those support systems, then they try to self-medicate these things. And if you have students who are in relational issues and they don't have the kind of the maturity or skill level to solve those problems or to like, you know, use other means rather than fighting, then that's what we get. So as the adults who run the schools and who are getting paid to work at those schools, it's our responsibility to come up with ways that we can better equip our students to deal with that. So fighting and drugs, to answer your question.
Well, and looking at Ignacio Valley High School and the improvements, I I feel like part of that may be related to when we went to the graduation of One Day at a Time and seeing the students there and how engaged they were, how seen they felt, how valued they felt. I feel like that may be one of the reasons why Ignacio Valley has improved. I'd be curious your thoughts on that as a student.
I was just about to say, I agree because I've seen like all the ODAT pupils, like I've seen them before when we were like sophomores and we didn't have all that stuff. It was way different back then. And like I feel like it's also like the new staff because like throughout the years I have seen like you guys have hired new staff or new teachers who students have been able to relate to more and like they go into their class and talk to them and like they're having a much better time because now they see school as somewhere they can like hang out with friends and especially their favorite teacher. So I feel like hiring like the hired staff as well as the programs where people can hang around adults they can like confide with really helps with staying out of trouble and confiding um with someone instead of resorting to drugs and alcohol.
So I didn't make up what I said earlier. Like it's not like Susanna and I didn't rehearse this earlier either. But like it's not that difficult. Like you respect kids, they respect you. You establish relationships with them, and those are the ways you invest in it, and you get something back. It's like a garden, right? You put your stuff into it, and you're going to get plentiful fruit and vegetables. And if you don't have that relationship, then you get stuff. Yes, yes. So thank you. That concludes my report. Thank you. I know I went a little long. Sorry about that. We'll get us back on track.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. It was important. Okay, so that moves us to the consent agenda. Items under consent are considered routine and will be approved and adopted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. Are there any items anyone would like to pull for discussion? And if not, I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve items listed under the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
The motion from trustee Nzewi and a second from trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. So we move to our business and action items, starting with 18.1. Conducting the public hearing and review of the Mount Diablo Unified 2024 to 2025 Local Control Accountability Plan, the LCAP.
Ready. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Clark, MDUSD Community. I'm Christina Felios, Assistant Director of Ed Services, and I'll be presenting the draft of the LCAP tonight.
We are going to open the hearing.
Anything else? Keep going. Okay, just tell me. I just wanted to note that in the agenda, there are 3 portions of the LCAP that have been attached in both English and Spanish. These include the LCFF budget overview for parents, the 23-24 annual update,
and the draft LCAP plan for 24-25. And the 23-24 LCAP annual update is used to report the goal analysis for the 23-24 year. Based on the annual update, this lays the foundation for the new proposed LCAP as well. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, am I supposed to do this? Oh, goodness. All right, I got it. All right. So the LCAP is a 3-year plan that supports the needs of all students in our district. And we are transitioning out of our previous 3-year cycle into now a new 3-year cycle. This is what is required to be in the LCAP. So we do need to have student achievement indicators, goals, actions, and related expenditures. The LCAP must include services that target each major student group, including the following. And I will note that this year there is a new requirement for the LCAP. So in addition to any districts that have 30 or more multilingual students, English learners, including actions for English learners, now any district that has 15 or more long-term English learners must address the needs of those students in the LCAP. So you'll see that in our draft. Also, the LCAP addresses increased and improved services for what we refer to as our unduplicated counts of students. And these are students who are English learners, who are socioeconomically disadvantaged or homeless, and are foster youth. The LCAP must also address the 8 state priorities, which are listed on this slide. And in the draft LCAP, when you look at our metrics in parentheses, you'll see some of these numbers that indicate the priority that the metric is addressing or measuring the outcome of. And thank you to Dr. Clark. He presented data on some of these priorities tonight. So pupil engagement is attendance, our dropout rate, and graduation rate. And he presented on school climate, which includes suspension and expulsion. Okay. So again, the LCAP is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and expenditures that are supporting all students. And on the right-hand side, these are some of the state indicators. These are the metrics from our state dashboard that are also included in the LCAP. So you will see these metrics listed, including our local performance indicators. So within our plan, we measure our student outcomes based on the dashboard data, but also on local indicators that we name. We use these indicators to measure growth and effectiveness. The effectiveness of our past goals and actions has been evaluated in the annual update portion. In our evaluation, what you will note is that while many of our metrics showed growth in the past few years, we did not meet our year 3 outcomes as expected in many areas. And upon reflection, we believe that this is likely due to the timing of the outcomes with the pandemic. So we set our 3-year outcomes, and then we didn't have school, and then we returned to school in a different way. And so we think that that did impact, but what we are seeing is progress back towards our pre-pandemic levels. And so for some of our goals, we are going to continue actions that we feel have been successful and have moved us in the direction of success for all students, and then adjusted some actions based on metrics and feedback. In addition to our data metrics, we also engage our educational partners in the development of this plan. And in our draft on pages 8 and 9, we indicate how our proposed LCAP goals and actions were influenced by our educational partners' feedback. This year, we did send a survey district-wide to all educational partners, staff, students, parents and family members, and our community advisory groups. So their input is also reflected in our updates to our actions and goals. So you will see that we are moving from 4 goals to 5 goals in this new proposed LCAP. 4 of our goals are broad LCAP goals, and 1 is our equity multiplier focus goal. A broad goal is a little less concentrated in its scope and may focus on improving performance across a wider range of metrics. And a focus goal is usually more concentrated in its scope and may focus on fewer number of metrics to measure improvement. The focus goal must be time-bound and must indicate how it will be measured. And we will talk about our equity multiplier goal when we get to goal 5. Okay, our proposed goal 1 is equitable education for all students. All students will receive a high-quality education in a safe and welcoming environment with high expectations and rigorous instruction in the California state standards that prepare them for college and career. And then you will note this is new to our goal. All students will demonstrate growth, meeting standards in English, English language development, and mathematics. And we have our proposed new or modified actions and services in this goal. In a few presentations from now, you'll be hearing more about bullet number 2, which is our literacy and our literacy screening tool. We talked about health and wellness support. Here it is in goal 1 for our students, positive school climate and safety, as well as access to a broad courses of study and broad range of educational opportunities for our students. At the heart of goal 1 is really the standards-based instruction materials and training for our teachers as well. Goal 2, cultivating an inclusive learning community. Dr. Clark talked about this in his data report. Highly qualified, culturally proficient, and responsive staff will create a safe and engaging learning environment. Respectful of all students' backgrounds, ensuring they are college and career ready when they graduate. There will be an increase in the percentage of classrooms where standards-based instruction is being observed. That's one of our new additions to this goal and one of our local measurements. So again, professional development here for our instructors, coaching, leadership teams, training for our classified staff, recruitment and retention of diverse staff, and our teacher induction and support program for our newest teachers. Goal 3, fostering family and community engagement. Families and community members will be informed and empowered as partners with Mount Diablo Unified to support student learning and improve student outcomes. New to this goal, there will be an increase in the percentage of families reporting that they feel they are an active partner with the school in educating their child. Some of our services and actions will be school connectedness, including family engagement and cultural competence training and fingerprinting opportunities for our families so they can participate in school activities. Our family and community communication, we're going to continue our outreach to families. Expanded translation support, looking at translation support in languages, Spanish and other languages that are spoken by our families, and continuing to expand our family nights and educational opportunities. Okay, goal 4. So previously, districts were required to include goals in the LCAP if they met the criteria for differentiated assistance for 3 or more years with student groups. This is no longer a requirement for the LCAP, but MDUSD is choosing to continue with this goal to focus on the growth for specific focal scholar groups. As Dr. Clark was showing us in our data, we continue to have opportunity gaps and achievement gaps for certain groups of students. And so we want to call this out in our LCAP plan and talk about the actions and services and expenditures that we are going to undertake to close those gaps and to see success for all student groups. This is the goal in which you will see our English learners and our long-term English learners specifically addressed as well. Okay. So focal scholars, specifically African-American students, foster youth, students experiencing homelessness, students with IEPs, and multilingual students will experience culturally responsive practices and be provided rigorous instruction within an educational environment that builds trust and inclusive partnerships between the students, families, and staff. All student groups will demonstrate growth meeting standards in English, English language development, and mathematics. So for each of our focal scholar groups, we have some newer modified actions and services. So for our support for African American students, continued professional learning for our staff, recruiting our families of African American students to participate on all advisory panels, continuing with our historically Black college and university college fairs, and local college tours focus on A through G requirements for college admission. We are implementing our year-long ethnic studies course at our high schools. We are continuing with small group social skills success and integrating the National Black Student Achievement Association standards into our work. For foster youth and students experiencing homelessness, access to supports and supplies, monitoring their progress, and continuing our empathy interviews, which have been very successful in learning more about what our students need. We have a contract with Foster Focus to support our foster youth, continuing to provide mental health supports, helping again to connect them with school, help them to attend school more frequently, feel safe at school, and a menu of supports to help address whatever their particular needs are, as well as our outreach to community agencies. Supports for English learners. So we will be using the English Learner Roadmap Self-Reflection Rubric, which is a tool from the state of California to help us monitor the progress of English learners towards reclassification. Continue our daily designated ELD at the elementary level, our instruction for our English learners within the elementary school day. Monitor the reclassification metrics to monitor progress for our students. Teacher training in foundational literacy as well as our dual language, and support staff, either TOSAs or EL support teachers to support this work. Supports for our long-term English learners. Again, this is a new requirement in the LCAP. Again, we will use the English Learner Roadmap Self-Reflection Rubric. We will provide designated and integrated English language development instruction. We will conduct English Learner Review Team meetings, which will review the data of each student and their progress towards reclassification. We will work with secondary administrators on the proper scheduling of ALD and ELD1 classes so that students are appropriately supported within their schedule. We will look to implement intervention programs to support students to reclassify as fluent English proficient. This includes teacher and administrator training, school counselors creating an academic plan for all freshmen, long-term English learners, and family presentations on the reclassification process. Supports for students with IEPs, professional development to implement and monitor IEPs and services to meet student needs, classroom assistance in special circumstances where that is needed, and our work will align with the SELPA plan, which is also being presented to you in just a little bit. And an additional action is supplemental funding and accountability for schools. So our school sites receive supplemental LCFF funding to also target student success at their sites. So we will be providing support, guidance, and accountability measures to increase student achievement, focused on any student groups that are in red or orange on the dashboard for each site. Okay, our new goal is the equity multiplier focus goal. We've learned a lot about this goal. So this provides additional funding to LEAs for allocation to school sites with prior year non-stability rates greater than 25% and prior year socioeconomically disadvantaged pupil rates greater than 70%. So in order to qualify as being part of this goal, a school must meet both of those measurements. The non-stability rates refer to whether a student has been able to complete an entire school year at a site or more than an entire school year at the same site. So this year, 2 schools in Mount Diablo Unified qualify, and they're Crossroads High School and Olympic High School. Okay, so the proposed goal for the equity multiplier focus goal, all students at Crossroads High School and Olympic High School will demonstrate a 6% increase in attendance rate and a 6% increase in on-pace graduation rate by June 2026, leading to an increase of 6% in graduation rates. An on-pace graduation rate indicates that they are earning credits at the rate that will keep them on pace for graduation. The proposed actions and services are student outreach and support to monitor attendance and wellness, increase family engagement, and connect with resources. So this would be personnel that would support that work at each site. and additional support or case management to monitor student credits, earnings, and provide specialized programs to support graduation. Again, this is a more concentrated goal, and it does need to be a SMART goal with a timeline attached to it. Okay. So we are asking for members of our community to please look at the draft LCAP, and we can receive any questions or feedback at this email, lcap@mdusd.org. Or there are also survey links on the district website under our families tab. There's a local control and accountability tab, and we will accept any questions or responses or suggestions through June 20th at 12 o'clock p.m.
Sure, yeah. Do we have any, do we have public comment on the item? No? Okay, so then I will close the public hearing. Thank you, Ms. Felios. Okay, so 18.2, we will conduct a public hearing on the Mount Diablo Unified School District proposed budget. So I'm going to go ahead and open that public hearing. Hello, Mr. Vargas.
Good evening. So I'll be talking about the 24-25 proposed budget tonight. So with that, we're required to adopt a budget by July 1st. The proposed budget is a tentative budget. It's based off the governor's May budget revise. And then when the state enacts their budget, it may change our assumptions or information that we're using to build the 24-25 budget. And then we will present the budget for adoption in 2 weeks, so June 26th. And then if there are any material revisions after the state enacts their budget, we have 45 days to present that, and that would be in August. And that's called the 45-day revise. Moving on, just some information sources that we use for the proposed budget. The School Services of California 24-25 May revise projection dartboard. So that's included in the narrative with all the percentages, dollar amounts for lottery or mandated block, so things of that nature. Also, we use the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association, so the common message. We get that from our county Office of Ed, and that's included in the written narrative. And then, of course, all the work that we do here at Mount Diablo. We meet with sites and departments, we get input, and that starts in January. And then we work through that pretty much till the end of May. So we're going back and forth, and we're getting information. And then also we do support the LCAP in terms of putting in those budgeted expenditures. And then moving on to the governor's May revise, these bullet points basically are some of the highlights. I don't know that the first bullet point is a big highlight, but it is a 1.07 COLA, and he's his May revise proposal is to fund it fully. The one thing I do want to just remind us is, remember back at first interim in December, we thought the COLA was going to be 3.94%. So I only bring that up because later in the PowerPoint, we'll talk about the multi-year, but just kind of think about this. If we did have a 3.94% COLA, that would generate about 9.8 million on average per year, or about 29.5 million over the 3-year multi-year. So just kind of think about that, because when I present the multi-year, like, back in December, we had different assumptions we were working off of. The special ed funding is to increase by 1.07%. So that goes from $887 to $949. The governor is drawing down on the rainy day fund about $8.4 billion. And that's to make up for lost revenues in prior years, but also to fund the COLA in the budget year 24-25. The expanded learning opportunities program deadline got extended for prior year funds to September 30th of 2024. Originally, it was June 30th. So we have an additional 3 months to spend our 21-22 and our 22-23 allocations. The arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grant was extended another year. And then the 10% reserve cap may cease for the 24-25 fiscal year. And really what that is we do a resolution to commit funds if we're above 10%. So we will come in 2 weeks with the resolution because we just don't know if the state enacted budget will be approved by then. But if it does and they pull from the rainy day fund, then we won't be doing that resolution. Then moving on to the proposed budget revenues, we're projecting $354.7 million in unrestricted revenues, a combined total $454.7 million. And then the charts just kind of represent the percentages. But as you can see, as I've always stated in the interim reports, the majority of our funds come from the local control funding formula. Then moving on to the proposed budget expenditures, we're projecting about $304 million in unrestricted expenditures, another 196.7 for almost, well, over a little bit of 500 million in expenditures. This does include the 9% ongoing salary increase. We do have about approximately 38 million budgeted in LCAP supplemental funds. Just so you know, that 38 million does include carryover funds because we're projected to, based off our unduplicated count, it's roughly about 28 million is what we are projected to generate, but we are budgeting the carryover. And then lastly, we do have 8 million set aside for textbooks and specifically 6 million for the adoption that we're looking at in 24-25. And just so you know that we are using one-time funds for that 6 million. And then the next slide shows the pie graph and the percentages. Our salaries and benefits are roughly about 91% on the unrestricted side. So that is the majority of our expenditures. And then this slide talks about our contributions. And so we're projecting roughly 85.5 million. The majority of that does go to our special education programs. And then we have 16 million for our routine restricted maintenance account. And then local programs of roughly 1.5 million. And with that, this basically shows a very high level summary. We are projecting to deficit spend roughly 34.8 million in the unrestricted funds. Again, like I said, about 10 million of that is related to LCAP supplemental, but we do have, we are spending down our fund balance, which we were aware of when we went into the 9% negotiations. And then moving to the restricted side, it's roughly 11.2 million, and that is spending down our one-time grants. And I would say on this particular year, we're spending down our learning recovery block grant. And then the last remaining dollars of our educator effectiveness block grant. So we're looking at a combined deficit spend of about 46 million. So our fund balance is dropping from 100 and almost 60 million to 113. And then moving on to all the other funds. This is a table that basically is showing you all the other funds that are within our financials. All funds are projected to end with a positive fund balance. And then you can see the changes that are happening within those funds. And again, these are projected budgets, but that's just a snapshot of all funds. Then moving into the multi-year projection. So This is the assumptions for revenue. For enrollment, we're using flat enrollment of a little bit over 29,000. And we've been using this since the first interim, the second interim. So we're keeping with that. Our ADA to enrollment ratio is projected at 93.5%. And then as I've done at the second interim, I'll give you some more numbers. So if we were to go up to 94%, so it's a 0.5%, that's worth about 1.8 million on average, and then 5.5 million over 3 years. And then if we go 1 point higher, that's almost double, so 3.6 million per year and almost 11 million over a 3-year period. So again, if we can get our students to come to class, then, you know, above 93.5%, then, you know, this is the impact of that. Our unduplicated pupil percentage is projected at 48%. Our COLAs for the out years are 2.93% for the 25-26 year, 3.08% for the 26-27 year. We're projecting our federal, state, and local revenues to remain constant. One thing that we did do for the budget year is our interest income, because of high interest rates. So we've been monitoring that. So we are taking some of that credit in the 24-25 year, but in the multi-year, I'm dropping it down about $3 million in 25-26. But we are taking advantage of what we've been trending over the last couple of years just for the budget year. And then our contributions, we're projecting to increase by 3.3 million in 25-26 and 3.5 million in 26-27. So on the expenditure side, our step and column increases are projected at 1.56%. Our salaries decrease in 25-26 due to the removal mostly of LCAP supplemental carryover funds. We are looking at moving our salaries related to our security to a restricted funding source. We do have a restricted funding source that is related to health and safety. A lot of that is related to facilities, but because of what we're facing with the state budget, that is one mechanism that we could utilize and still keep those particular salaries and benefits in our budget. And then for 26-27, salaries decrease because we're looking at utilizing the remainder of the Learning Recovery Block Grant. And really that is student service salaries that are related or to address social and emotional needs. And then restricted salaries do increase related to special ed cost in 25-26 and the movement of those security costs. And then 26-27, they increase again for the special ed, as well as the movement of those particular salaries related to social and emotional needs. And then unrestricted benefits decrease overall in 25-26, although we are projecting health costs at about 10% and rising PERS rates, but they're being offset because of the salaries that are moving out, but also because we're removing, or we are in the last year of the supplemental retirement program that we started 5 years ago. So our last payment is 24-25, and that's roughly 1.7 million. And then on the restricted side, benefits are projected to increase because of those movement of those salaries from the unrestricted side of the budget and increased special ed costs. Books and materials for both unrestricted and restricted decrease because of removal of carryover funds. And then on the restricted side, the removal of the 6.1 million for our planned textbook adoption. And then services and other operating expenditures are projected to decrease because again, we're removing carryover. And then restricted costs are planned to go up because of special education increases. And then again, any contracts that are related to the social and emotional needs as well as security costs. So this one's a little hard to see, but in the end, we are projected to deficit roughly 34.8 million, like I said earlier, in the budget year on the unrestricted side, a little over 27 million in the second year, and then 22 million in the third year. So with that all being said, we will make the 3% reserve. But as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, we have a little bit after a small assignment of about 1.9 million, we have about 46,000 above the 3%. So again, with these couple of shifts that we're projecting in our budget, we're still going to make 3%. And then this is a breakout of the fund balance and how it goes every single year. And most of the committed funds are related to the projected deficits. So just again, the future considerations, it's the state enacted budget and what comes from that. You know, the expiring and spending down of one-time funds, and then cost increases for STRS and PERS, health benefits, and then other operating costs like insurance and utilities. And then lastly, just enrollment and student attendance and maintaining the growth. So next steps is the budget adoption in 2 weeks. And then we'll have a state enacted budget by July 1st. And if there are any material revisions, we'll present a 45-day revise in August. And then we'll be presenting unaudited actuals in September. And so we'll know for sure what our beginning fund balance is for the 24-25 year. And then we start interim reports all over again in December. And then in January of 25, we get the governor's proposal for the 25-26 year. So with that, I can take any questions.
I have a comment. Is that okay? You know, when we become school board members, not till we're elected do we realize school budgets as a whole, you could take a whole class on it. And so many of us have went to CSB and got the training. And when I read through your budget for the first time, it was like an example they gave in the training on how to do school budgets. So it was so very clear, and I thank you for that.
I did have just a few things. One is when you talk about the increasing costs and some of the things that for us to be looking out for. You mentioned insurance, and that's something that I feel like we're seeing across the state is something that's increasing astronomically.
So
how do we account for that here?
It's accounted for in our budget for the 24-25 year, but I can comment because we just switched to a new provider, Keenan, as of July 1st, 2023. Our renewal, our renewal was roughly about 200,000 more than what we paid in the current year. So I was getting numbers early in the spring that it could be roughly about 15%. And I think that came in a little under 7. So relatively speaking, for a couple 100,000, and especially, you know, kind of to your point, because we're hearing the same thing, I think it has more to do with who we joined. And Keenan is so large that they're able to absorb a lot more than some other JPAs or joint power authorities. You know, and I've belonged to different ones in the different districts that I've worked for. But I think just that economies of scale is helping us.
That's great. Thank you. I think that was really good timing that we made that change when we did.
And then the other piece to risk management is workers' comp. And so we're in the initial stages with Keenan. Our workers' comp rate was roughly like 2.1% in the 23-24 year. And then this rate for this year is like 1.9 roughly. So it did drop, but as we are working through Keenan, like they're getting our claims history. And so that may change for the 25-26 year, but at least for the 24-25 year, we did see that decrease a little. And so that will impact the benefits on salaries. So, but again, you know, what I'm presenting right now is what I know right now
Absolutely.
at the moment.
Thank you. And then you had mentioned if we are able to improve our attendance rates, that you're estimating 93.5% right now.
Correct.
But if we were to increase to 94.5%, did I hear you correctly that that would be 3.6 million in the first year or 11 million additional over 3 years?
I believe it was 3.6 each year. And again, that's based off of our enrollment assumptions of flat enrollment, and the 48% unduplicated. So it's 3.6, yes, and almost 11 million over a 3-year period.
Okay, so that's definitely something we're always working on, attendance. So thank you. And I just want to say, we are so fortunate to be in this position. There are so many other school districts around us and around the state right now that are definitely not in a place to be able to certify a positive budget as we're able to do right now. So I want to thank our district leadership and staff for keeping us afloat, and also for making these 3-year plans are intentional. It is, yes, it is deficit spending, but it is planned deficit spending. I want to make sure our community understands that. And so I want to thank you for explaining each of those pieces of what those pieces are and why and how we're spending them down. There are certain carryover and certain one-time funds that it does make sense for us to spend down in those cases.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I do have a question, and on the slide that includes the components of the ending fund balance, the committed items includes the 25-26 and the 26-27 projected deficits. I'm curious why only the unrestricted amount is included instead of the combined amount of the deficit.
So so I only include the unrestricted because that is coming out of the fund balance. The restricted deficit spending is lowering restricted fund balance. So we don't earmark restricted dollars because they are restricted. So there's not a designation. I guess I could say the designation is up top where it says restricted categorical balances. So that becomes kind of the components of ending fund balance. So we're not making a designation of, because it's already happening. So like, for example, if you look in 24-25, we have a component of ending fund balance for the restricted side of the budget at 46.2 million. So then you flow it through to the 25-26 year and it gets lowered to 39.3 million because we're deficit spending. So it's already like kind
It's
of
already in there.
Yeah, it's establishing its own component of ending fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
I actually thought you were going to ask me why did the 25-26 projected deficit number not show up in the second year, but that's usually a question I get asked.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vargas. And so I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, and then we are going to move to 18.3, conduct a public hearing on the Mount Diablo Unified School District 2024 to 25 proposed special education local plan area, SELPA. So we'll go ahead and, do we have someone presenting? this item? Oh, we do. Open the public hearing on that.
We have no presentation on this item, but it's required to be completed every 3 years. Section B, which is the large section, every year we do the annual service and budget plan. It's routine. We've gone through all of the required meetings, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you for that concise and detailed explanation. Okay, so no public comment? Okay, so we'll close the hearing. I believe you.
So I just wanted to note that that plan was presented to the Community Advisory Committee. So thank you so much.
Okay, so we move to 18.4, the update for Project Arise and the dyslexia screener.
This one will be a little longer. Not much. All right, so if you remember, we spoke last time about the dyslexia screener. I shared with you that there had been some changes to the proposition for the screener, and that they were starting with kindergarten and grade 2 inclusive. So formally, when the proposal came out for the bill to have the dyslexia screener, it was only for grades 1 and 2. And now they added the kindergarten in there. And it was also once, but now it's inclusive, so for 3 years in a row. So this is required to be in place by 2025-26 school year. So we have 1 more year in order to get all of our ducks kind of in a row. And this is a massive undertaking, and it's also in line with our main goal, which is teaching kids to read. So we wanted to make sure that we got ahead of it early, and we were comprehensive in our approach to it. So what we did is we again, this is part of the language from the trailer bill, which was an important part of our consideration for our whole program, because as you can see, they want us to do the screener for children who are at risk for reading difficulties, including dyslexia, but they still have the language in there that this can, the assessment that we give cannot be used for reclassification of English language learners, which is also a priority for us. So while we want to have one consistent assessment measure for all students, not all students are the same, right? They all come with different needs, so we have to have multiple tools available to us. This next slide was going to, it's actually a copy of a slide that I presented to you last year, so I could follow up with the outcomes of these different projects. So when we looked at iReady, there's a separate paper pencil screening in iReady for dyslexia, but they do have modules that test for reading achievement across different areas. But what we looked at is it was over-identifying students for risk of reading disabilities at an earlier age, so that wasn't going to consistently work for us. We also did work with Multitudes, which is the UCSF project, and we participated with them in multiple ways. We participated with the English version of the test, and for 2 of our schools, we were able to get student level data that has been shared with the principals, and that was as of today, and we got it. And we also participated in their Spanish language version of the test. They've also asked us to continue to track those children that we tested kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade into 3rd grade as they expand up. Because when they were charged with doing the work, they did not plan on going all the way up, but now they're having to do that, right, as districts are being responsive to this mandate. Interesting thing about Multitudes is that they had to readjust their algorithm. So they, what they first learned is when they were working in the pandemic with the kids who went through the pandemic, and then they came back next year to school, nobody was at risk of learning disabilities. They all achieve much higher. So they had to adjust that, which they did. And but for us as a district, it's not a tool that we can adopt yet. It's just simply not at the point that it's ready. So we did go ahead and we worked with M-Class with some of our schools this year, and we've had good feedback from staff. We didn't use it consistently across the sites to get effective data up on a district level, but we do know that the sites that used it were able to show growth in their students' reading levels. Also, the district is participating through the county Project Arise, which, you know, it has online literacy courses for California educators. And we've had about 40 people trained so far across 4 of our elementary sites. And we are also working with TNTP on part of that through the foundational literacy skills. And here's just an overview of some of the courses that they offer. So as a district, we're not just identifying kids at risk of learning disabilities. We're working on the basic foundation of them learning to read. And also, what do we do when we get the information that those kids are struggling? What does this mean? So really doubling down on those efforts. Also, one more thing going back to the assessments. We have some proposals coming up, but I did want to explain these 2 tests before we get to our recommendations, because ESGI is one of them, and we are going to be proposing that for our younger children, and you can see why. There's no time limit. It's hard to give a time test to a TK student. I think LA USD just got into trouble for that. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been in the newspaper, but who knows. And so taking those time tests out of the kindergarten and the TK realm, but still really making sure that we are doing formative assessment on those students to make sure that they are making progress and we're catching them early. And if you remember back to the required screener for children for risk of learning disabilities, including dyslexia, that is not required in TK. So we're even being more proactive there. The DIBBLES, which is essentially online, now the M-Class, and DIBBLES has been around for many, many years, well vetted, well regarded as a tool to identify and do progress monitoring, formative assessment for students reading. That is over there on the other side, and we've already covered that slide before. What's also interesting to note as we go down here, when we look at our recommendations, you'll see in the 23-24 school year, we are using the ESGI for our TKK students. Next year, we plan to only use that for our K students, because the following year, that will be our assessment for our TK students. This year, there is an assessment that we give to all of our preschoolers, actually. It's called the DRDP. Developmental results profile, and it's required for every student who's in a state preschool program, not just those with disabilities. This year it's optional for TK students. Next year it will be required. So that is something that we'll look at going forward. That is a test that includes academic skills, self-help skills, and social skills, but not necessarily at the fundamental level of reading that we need. So a little bit of double dipping for those kids. This year we've used iReady for our diagnostic test and screener, but then we do plan next year to switch to M-Class. And ultimately, our goal is that in that 25-26 school year, M-Class will be our diagnostic tool and screener. And again, the 3rd and 5th grade benchmark. For our math, though, this year, M-Class does not have the math component. So you'll see we can't switch to the M-Class for math until this year. We're going to continue to propose that we use the iReady for math. Again, if M-Class was available this year, we would use it this year. It's just simply not there. And also, one of the things for our reclassification for our English learners, we are still proposing to use iReady, and that's because of the language in the Ed Code that talks about how the screener cannot be used for reclassification. The other problem is that the screener only goes to K6, and we need reclassification all the way through K-12. And obviously, we do plan on still using the common data protocol, just like we're doing. I'm working with staff to ensure that not only are we collecting the data, I think the most important thing is what we're doing with the data. So attached to the board docket tonight, you will see 2 contracts being brought for approval. One is the iReady, which is only for reclassification purposes. We do know that some of the sites have continued to use their own funds that have been voted on by the school site councils to purchase additional modules. Because this is coming later in the year and those school site councils have already gone and established those budgets, we are providing every school site this year with M-Class and those modules, which they will get to use, and but they will still have the option of that iReady out of their site funds, but next year we'll switch 100% to M-Class. But this will be our soft launch year. And so that's what we're asking approval for this time. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. So this is being required by the state, correct? Because I always have concerns when you want to test everybody, because then you get to label people differently, which makes me uncomfortable. Furthermore, this was started in a red state by someone who's a election denier. And so sometimes things start out sounding good and then they go very bad. So I just want us to proceed with real caution and make sure we don't start labeling kids or trying to make assumptions about different groups of kids or where they live or so on and so forth, that we're just doing, number one, we have to do what we have to do for the state, which I'll blame Newsom for that. And number one, really with a bullet should be, we do what's best for our kids. So I do have some reservations about this whole new thing.
I think many people would echo those sentiments. If we're testing to test, what's the point? If we're testing to support kids earlier, there was one more slide which I didn't get to. This basically talks about not only our assessment process, but the interventions that we're doing. What we have seen is that this year we've made a big push for the Wonders Reading Intervention Kits at the second tier 2. So our base curriculum actually comes with a tier 2 intervention pack that we rolled out this year. And at one site in particular, they just saw 4 points in one grade level by, using the interventions that are available to them on that campus. So when you actually roll out the interventions, it works. So that's a good thing. And I think that's our priority too, not just testing for the sake of it to meet the mandate, but what are we actually doing with it?
So thank you very much for this presentation. It's really great to hear how much we've learned just in the past year with all of the pilots that you've run at all of the different schools, really testing this out and figuring out what's going to work best for our kids and where you're going to get the most information. So it's really great to see that, and that you've thought through how we can roll this out over multiple years, given where we're starting from. So I think that's really great. I did have a question. You said M-Class is not available for math this year. Is math going to be a new thing for them, or?
Yes, we did reach out and ask them, is their math ready for us to purchase this year? And they said no, but it will be for next year.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Sounds good. And then I think to your point, Trustee Mason, the idea of it being used to label kids, I think that's part of why the state law says that this cannot be used. The screener cannot be used to identify. Yes, thank you. Where was that? There we go. Shall not be used for any high stakes purposes. So it's not used to identify kids in any particular way, like identifying as an individual with exceptional needs, or even for gifted and talented, which we don't have. So I think that's helpful, and really what I'm seeing from the schools that have been piloting it, and what I'm excited about, is that it's able to really provide the information that teachers are looking for, of the specifics that for each individual student, how can I help this child learn to read? So my only other question is, are there any other materials that we should be purchasing for our school sites in addition to this, that we've been using at some of the other pilot sites, like sets of books or other items?
That is what we plan to use next year for. We just have been focusing on how do we roll out this training. It's going to look different for our K2 teachers versus our 3-5 teachers. It's less intensive. It's a maze assessment in 3-5. And so really focusing on rolling this out with intentionality, not just in the first training, but how do you actually use the modules? How do you use the data? Again, I think our commitment at this point is not just to jump through the hoops, but how are we actually doing this and using it? So that's been our focus for this year. And then we will start to look at, okay, now what are the gaps? What materials do we need as we go through and do our focus groups again in collaboration with the Project Arise. I'm here speaking, but I'm not doing this all by myself. So,
Oh yes, tell us
we
about your
see,
whole team. Who
yeah,
is
so,
collaborating together to put this plan together?
pretty much everybody in the district. I will say it's, I mean, we're a school. We teach kids to read. That's what we do, right? We want our kids to be literate, financially literate and literate. So it's been a massive, Wingstee has been taking the lead on the Project Arise. That particular staff, Susan Hartwig in particular, and her team has been doing a lot of work around that. Ray's been pulling data for us, and it's been a nice operation. Yeah, great. I don't know why they're not here. I'm standing.
Susan's right behind you.
They're here.
Ray's behind you. Thank you.
Yeah, if there are no more questions, we can take a motion.
I move that, sorry. I move that we approve the contracts connected to the presentation as recommended by staff.
Second.
The motion by trustee Nzewi and a second by trustee Cowan. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and that motion passes 4-0 with one abstention and trustee Barrios concurrent.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move to 18.5, review and potential approval of additional courses of study for alternative diploma coursework. And this is an item that we looked at before. Are we going to be? No. Okay.
This is just for approval of the materials we reviewed last time. Thank you.
I move that we approve additional courses of study for alternative diploma coursework.
I'll second that.
That's a motion from trustee Nzewi and a second from trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. So we move to 18.6, review and potential approval of Mount Diablo Unified School District Proposition 28, Arts and Music in Schools Funding Annual Report.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Hoover, and I'm our VAPA curriculum specialist. And along with Ms. Felias, we have prepared for you our first annual Arts and Music in Schools funding report. This is a CDE required report that we will be doing yearly from now on to report on the funding and how we've used it. We've previously given you the information, the data that we'll be turning into the CDE. This year, the funding came later than we thought it would. We didn't receive the funding until March. So there was a very, very small window for our principals to go ahead and start spending. So you'll see our numbers are low for our spending to start, but next year we'll have a much more robust report for you. But we've presented what we have so far.
Thank you so much for providing that context. I know the school sites are really, really excited about these funds and additional support for the arts.
I move that we approve the 23-24 Arts and Music in Schools Annual Report.
Second. A motion from trustee Nzewi and a second from trustee Cowan. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. Thank you. Okay, so we move to 18.7, review and potential approval of accelerated Spanish 7th and 8th grade materials.
Good evening, Dr. Clark, esteemed board members, audience. We are here for information of action. We have the pleasure to bring to you our small but mighty adoption of accelerated Spanish. And I just want to remind you that we have students that when they finish 5th grade in a dual language program, they continue taking advanced Spanish, even though they are not at a dual language middle school. And so this adoption is to address the accelerated Spanish of 7th and 8th grade students.
So hopefully these slides look familiar, because what we've really been trying to ensure is that all the various textbook adoptions that have come forward to you and many of our departments are similar, because we want our processes to be similar. So as Carmen mentioned, this was a smaller adoption. We are just talking about 4 of our middle school sites that have these accelerated Spanish classes. So in our selection process, we had an adoption committee that was created. We strongly encouraged every single of our 4 sites to have their accelerated Spanish teachers present, and they all fortunately joined us. They could opt in, but they all did. And so the meetings were held both inside and outside of the school day. Some of them were after school, and some of them we released them and provided subs. Our internal team in our department reviewed the survey responses from publishers to make sure that they kind of had all the requirements that we deemed necessary in order to move forward with them. Then we invited our publishers to present their materials to our adoption committee members. And we did also have the public review of materials at Willow Creek for our community members, teachers, committee members as well, to view these options in September, and then also again in February. And they were able to provide feedback. So this is just a look at our timeline. So you can see the various dates of when we had our teachers coming together, where we learned from our the publishers. The teachers piloted each set of our 2 options that we looked at. And then finally in May, our team came together and we reviewed all of our data and had a final vote. So these are our 4 middle schools that have the accelerated Spanish. Remember, these are just 7th and 8th grade. Our 6th grade accelerated Spanish continues to use the Maravillas, which is a continuation of what they use from kindergarten through 5th grade. So the 6th graders are not a part of this piece. So those were our 4 school sites: Foothill Middle School, Holbrook Language Academy, Oak Grove Middle School, and Riverview. And like I mentioned, Oak Grove did have 2 teachers, because they have different teachers who teach their 7th and 8th grade, but the other school sites had 1. Each of those sites have the one teacher that teaches both the 7th and 8th grade accelerated Spanish. And so when they made the decision, they thought that the program organization of the option that they chose was easy and accessible. The students and teachers could monitor their progress. There are a lot of really strong ways for teachers to monitor the students' progress. That they felt that the instructional planning and teacher support was central. When we talk about cultural responsiveness, it used to be, at least when I was studying Spanish, everything came from Spain. What our teachers really looked at is that there were a variety of different, just like now, of countries and genders and so all through South America, the Caribbean, Spanish speakers all around the world. So they were really excited to see that and the choice that our teachers went with the technology integration. It worked well with Google Classroom, easy to navigate, lots of bells and whistles. Some of the tests can self-grade if they want them to be multiple choice, or the teachers can say, no, I don't want this to be graded. So it's pretty fancy. And that there are resources available for our families to see what our students are studying, which is exciting, especially for our Spanish dominant families who have their students in this class. But also there are English translations for what the students are studying. One more click. Oh, sorry, that's right up there. Yeah, so what they chose, we had Perspectivas was one of the options, but our teachers unanimously voted for Anécdotas, which is created by One Way Learning. And so these, you can see, are all the pieces that we are hoping to purchase for our teachers and our students. And you see at the bottom the ticket price. So this includes, as you can see, 8-year licenses for the digital courseware, teacher edition student books, workbooks, and barcoding, and these will be delivered straight to school sites. And so we are hoping, and the next one, there's a little bit of a cushion just because making sure that all the delivery costs and the tax for all the different areas, we just want to make sure we don't exceed. And so that is what our teachers voted for. We did ask them if any of them wanted to join us, but a lot of them are gone on vacation, some of them in Spanish-speaking countries. So unfortunately, they are not here with us tonight, but they're very excited to see what the results will be. And so we wanted to ask if there are any questions about our process, about the materials.
I just want to say, first of all, it's wonderful to see you, Carmen, even though there's not a mariachi band with you right now. So thank you for being here. And my only question was just, can you remind us, so students would take these courses in 7th and 8th grade, and so now they're even more accelerated. So then what do they take in high school next? What does the pathway look like?
You know, we've been giving the students an assessment and talking to the teachers at the high school level to see how they are doing. And we are placing them in Spanish 3, and they are doing very well. And this group that we have this year in the assessment that we gave them, what's the name of it? Oh, yeah, advanced assessment. They perform at a higher level than the kids that the group last year. For example, with the advanced assessment, in order to qualify for the seal of biliteracy, the minimum is a 6. And we have some students that are already like between 5.75 and 7. So we are very excited, and we think that the materials are very appropriate for the students. And the literature is vast. They have a good support for the grammar and also the cultural aspect too.
All right, with that, I will move to approve the adoption of the accelerated Spanish 7th and 8th grade materials, not to exceed $250,500.
I'll second that.
Motion from trustee Count and a second from trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 5-0
Thank
with
you.
concurrence.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move to 18.8, review and potential approval of new members to the Community Advisory Committee.
No presentation, but please approve them. 4 new members is very exciting. No.
Yes, please.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the membership for the CAC committee. V. Kutakos, V. Lovell, Ed Mora, and J. Price.
Second that.
Motion from trustee Mayo and a second from trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and that motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. Thanks, Dr. Healy.
Exciting for CAC.
Okay, so we move to 18.9, review and potential approval to appoint 1 new member to serve on the 2018 Measure J Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
So we received an application, and so we're presenting that for your approval. Melanie's here if we have any additional questions.
I actually have a question. In reading the application, I noticed on the top of the application, it said it's a 1 or 3-year term. So then I went and read the rest of it. Somewhere else it says it's a 2-year term. And if a member's in good standing, they could be on for 3 total terms. And most of these people were appointed in 2019. So it looks like most of them are going to be like rotating off this year because they would have served all of their terms. Is that correct interpretation?
Isn't okay, sorry. Thank you for your question. So that's actually some information that we're looking at right now. We had some CBOC members that joined in 2019 and then some that added later on. From my understanding, and per our bylaws. So I agree our website and our bylaws are having 2 different pieces of information. Per our bylaws, they are 2-year terms. And so we're looking into and we'll be addressing committee members who potentially we should be preparing to lose them, unfortunately, at our next regular scheduled meeting. So we have a special meeting tomorrow. It will not be addressed because it's not on the agenda, but in our meeting in August, we'll make sure it's a discussion item.
And then my other question is, I noticed in reading through, I didn't see anything about there being a way of trying to get people from all over the district, being intentional about not having everybody from one community, but actually the different communities of the districts represented. And I don't know if that's a process that you have to go through and change your bylaws, but just something to think about.
Correct. It is not in our current bylaws, but I do know that some districts, especially larger districts, do have information similar to how our board is set up. And so it's not in our current bylaws. However, they could be revised, or that we look at that during the creation of bylaws at the board level for a future bond.
Okay, is there a motion?
Madam President, I move that the board appoint Aaron Adrian as a member of the Measure J Committee.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Motion from trustee Mayo and a second from trustee Count. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and that motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member.
Is Aaron's not here, right? Okay. I just wanted to say thank you to Aaron, wherever you are, for stepping up to serve the community. It's great to have another parent and active person on the Measure J committee.
Okay, so we move to 18.10, review and potential approval of changes to board policies and administrative regulations per California School Board Association CSBA recommendations, December 2023 quarterly update. So this is something that we've reviewed before. So
I move to approve revisions to board policies 0150, 5116.2, 5131.2, and administrative regulations 1220, 5131.2, 5141.21 as presented.
I'll second that.
okay, motion from trustee Nzewi and a second from trustee Mason. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. So we move on to 18.11. A similar item, review and potential approval of changes to board policies and administrative regulations for California School Board Association CSBA recommendations, March 2024 quarterly update. This is also an action item.
Madam President, I move to approve updates to board policies 0470, 5141.21, 5144, 6115, 6141.2, 6175, and administrative regulations 5144, 6115, 6141.2, 6175, and board bylaws 9320, 9323.2, and E 9323.2 E1 as presented.
Second.
Motion from trustee Count and a second from trustee Mayo. Trustee Barrios, how do you vote?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0 with concurrence from our student board member. Okay, so we move to 18.12, review revisions to board bylaws 9123, 9123.1, and 9250. This is an information item, so this is our opportunity to ask any questions.
I had one comment on the vice president role. It says that it lists their responsibilities, and one of them is just to serve as the presiding officer in the absence of the president or vice president. Well, if the vice president's absent, it's going to be kind of hard to serve in that capacity, I'm thinking.
Good eye.
That, and then there was also a reference to board members having credit cards. We don't, and I don't think we should, so I don't know if we want to change that or leave it. But yeah, that just heads to trouble. I think our attorney is.
Yes, I would like to remove the credit card reference for sure.
No credit cards and no keys.
Okay, this is helpful, very helpful feedback. Any other kind of questions or comments? Okay, well, I will adjourn this meeting.